everyone, welcome back to the Growing State channel. I'm so excited to have this conversation again. I'm going to be very short. I'm going to be very straight to the point. We are starting again to our conversation with Daniel 3. Daniel 3 is a very tricky one because it's quite short, self-explanatory, but at the same time, it has a deep thing that I've learned about God that I didn't pay attention over the years. Now, let's go back to the story. So I won't read the story, but it's just a summary of the story is the king Nebuchadnezzar hear that he's the head of gold. Maybe I wasn't in his head, but I suspect that's what happened, and decide to build a gold statue and require every single human being on the planet to bow down to the statue. Lo and behold, the friends of Daniel are the only one that we talked about there, because one of the things that they don't talk about Daniel, I'm not sure if Daniel was bowed to the statue or not, but I doubt he did. But it was quite obvious that the people who were found out not to obeying were Daniel's the three friends, who probably made it obvious that they didn't want to bow to the statue, right? We don't know where Daniel was at the time. So we're going to focus on that. So many times and for so many years, a lot of people read that chapter focusing on the friends. In a sense of finding God in the story. And there's two things that I've learned from that chapter, and I'm going to go into that. Number one is found on the verses 6 and 7. 6 and 7, what am I learning about God on 6 and 7? It's quite tricky, right? But what I'm learning about God on 6, 7 is he asked everyone, is the instruction that Nebuchadnezzar has given. That is clear to me by my learning, right? His instruction is, if anybody does not bow to the statue, they will be thrown into the furnace. He gave an instruction at the moment you should bow to the statue. There's two things there. You don't bow to the statue, you're thrown into the furnace. And secondly, when is the timeline in which you're supposed to bow to the statue? And that's where I say to myself, to everybody in the planet, people, whatsoever, wherever you were, no matter time zone you were, at that moment, whether you are asleep in America and whether you sleep in Asia or whatever, because I suspect that the time zone was still relevant on those days. It's something we need to wear. Two things, time zone, timeline, I don't care, you bow to my statue. So if you are asleep, wake up, you hear the sound, you bow to the statue. And if you don't, obviously, if you don't bow to the statue, you're thrown into the furnace. So what do I learn about God on this is, first, I feel I put myself in the people living in those days. And I say to myself, my God, leadership was dark. It's still dark to a certain extent now, but it was so obviously dark. This is a representation of darkness to the highest score. And this guy was so wicked. But yet, what his actions showed to me about God is, did we know working about unforgiveness, gossip, talking bad about people, not paying your tithe on time, all those things that we're doing that are not obvious sins like fornication, adultery, and fight and anger and all that. There's some people who are so good at covering their darkness, right? What happened? All those hidden sins that we do not obey when we wake up, and maybe we struggle or we purposely don't want to obey and we are excusing ourselves. What happened if God was to throw us in the furnace? And also, God does not give us a timeline to obey. He's given us grace to be ourselves, to walk through him, to help him, to be helped by him. And there's no timeline to obey there. We showcase a leadership that is dark, and we showcase, I believe this story is not there by accident, and we showcase how he wants to be obeyed and what's going to happen. And God's given us grace and still giving us grace from century to century. We're still refusing to acknowledge him. We're still refusing to acknowledge even his son. To a time before the son, there was no son. He was giving us time rules from Adam, from now till whatever. We still be giving grace. We're still refusing. And yet, the planet is still standing. The world is not destroyed. We're still here. For me, that shows mercy. I know it's disputed, but for me, that's what I learned about God, his mercy. Now, I know I had conversation about why would God created the world and why would God is going so bad. Now, God has given us a free will, and that will, he's given us the power to obey him. He's given us the ability to obey him, but yet he's also given us a free will, the choice to choose, right? And yet we don't always obey. sometimes we purposely go to the evil ones. It's a lot of people dabbling into witchcraft and a lot of things that's going on in the world today. And there are people who are clearly wicked. There are people who, at the time of the World War, people being killed in many ways, the slavery, the colonization, all this wicked stuff that the planet has been doing. God is still giving us chance to obey. He still hasn't destroyed the planet where he would have destroyed the planet. And if it brings me back to the time of Noah, where he finally got angry, he flooded the world and destroyed everybody, and he regretted it. The Bible says he regretted. That means that God is still constantly trying to not force obedience on us, but willingly want us to obey him, and he still shows his grace and mercy. And that's what those two verses show me about God. Okay, God is gracious. And then, lo and behold, story down, these guys are found not to be obeying Nebuchadnezzar. These three boys are found not to be obeying Nebuchadnezzar. They stand their ground and they face him, and they've been now saying, I'm going to do a timeline in which you're going to obey, which God doesn't give us timeline in which we need to obey. He gives us a life when we are alive, a life on earth to obey, but yet we don't. But he then gives them a time and say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to put my enemies to instrument, and you need to bow to this statue. And these guys say, no, we're not going to do it. Lo and behold, they're thrown into the furnace, or to the blazing furnace. On verses 17, we see that this guy now stand up. What I want to focus on, their standing up for God in there is, which is remarkable, and this is unique to them, and it's commendable and something to learn from. And I know a lot of people focus so much on that specific part of it, but I don't think what they did had an impact on the world today. What I think is more impactful is not their obedience, which is commendable, fine, but what I think is more impactful is the fact that in their action of obedience, they mentioned something as powerful about God. They understood that obedience is not based on whether God is going to be answering us into our favor. So meaning what? What I'm trying to say is that their obedience is clear, that they understand that we still need to obey. They understand that God is merciful, but it doesn't back to our favor. Meaning what? That they say, if save us, we will not. And they also understood that God is the ultimate salvation. So they say, we will not. They understood the nature of God. That means that a lot of time we expect God to answer yes to us, danger or not. He decide whether he take us alive, allow the devil to take our life, or we die at a specific time or not. Very difficult to swallow. Very, very difficult to swallow, because we want our own way. We hope for the best. We want our own way. But we have to understand that he does not always going to have to say about that. But the obedience, they understood that God is ultimately the decider and the creator of their life. And if God does not liberate it, so be it. Now, there is a book that I read about how they prayed when they were in the furnace. In spite of that, they still pray out to God and reach out to God, and they did pray and got saved. They prayed, and there's a beautiful story of the prayer of Azariah. It's such a beautiful prayer and everything, but still God still say yes. He could have still, after that prayer, still say no. And that's what I want to point out, that the Bible is specific about. You can go and read the prayer of Azariah, which is Abednego in the story. His name was changed. When you hear prayer, you see how beautiful it is, and it's another heartful prayer and everything, which is something that we should be inspired by. Not the fact that they stood against the king, but the way they humbled themselves towards God. But what I want to focus on, my learning about God, is more about the fact that he was clearly understanding that God is the ultimate decider at the end, and that obedience should not be in something that we say we are going to obey. If God gave us this, we obey first, and God decide what he wants to do. That's what I learned. And God is merciful, so we have to trust that they get saved. Obviously, they prayed. It's not mentioned how they pray in the Bible, but they have a story. There's a story how they pray in the Apocrypha. I actually would advise you to read it. It's a really beautiful prayer. But they pray, but God say yes. In this case, God say yes. And what I learned about God's salvation in the story is that the salvation of God is unique. Why? Because of the reaction of Nebuchadnezzar. From verses 28 till about verses to 28 and 29, we see about how once again Nebuchadnezzar praises God, is all excited. He actually even decided that no more bow to the statue. Let's leave the statue where it is. Let's just bow to God. And he even now, he was a character. He now imposed and said anybody who bows to anything else but this God will be torn limb from limb. I just don't understand this guy with torturing people. But look, that's a story for another day. God have mercy on us. I'm so thankful that God does not. Now he's asking people to obey the God of the real God, the God of the creation of this earth. But he's then telling them, if you don't do, I'll kill you. We're getting there that he still didn't get it. But let's forget about him. Let's not focus on that because we all sinner in some way, right? But what I want to say is he represents the dark world. And I know he was dabbling into witchcraft because they were doing a lot of witchcraft in those days. And he still knew, even in the darkness of dark and the practice of witchcraft, that there is no way that the devil could have given them power to be saved from the fire like that. That means that God is the unique, his salvation is unique. No one can take credit from God's salvation. No one can take credit from when God's hands is on something. No one. Like, I'm not here to discredit the laying of hand and all this thing that is going on in the world today and people playing on YouTube and in the morning. I'm not discrediting time, but I'm just saying that your healing does not belong to any pastor and prophet. It belongs to God. God, when things, I've seen that in my life sometimes, when some things happen to me, I say, no, that has to be God. There's no way someone can take credit. God showcased the uniqueness of his power in many ways, and this was showing, and sometimes it takes a high level of darkness for him to showcase the uniqueness. In a way, I feel like sometimes darkness is necessary for God to show the uniqueness so that people do not get confused. Again and again, this guy, just like some of us, prays and acknowledge the power of God and even requested for people to obey God and raise his hand and whatever. But it's no guarantee that he was closer to God and he obeyed God. I will end up my talk again one more time with the quote of the week. Bible literacy is on the rise. People are talking about God online. I am here again talking about God, but obedience to God through his son Jesus the Messiah is in decline. Right from before Jesus came on earth till now, obedience is declining and declining. May God have mercy on us and he help us all. Thank you for listening.